Hello everyone, how are we doing? Sorry, I'm a tad late today by 1 minute, I see. I was just had to do some last minute setup stuff that I didn't expect to do, but here we go. We're here now. How is everyone? Hope you're all doing well. Let me know who's with us today. It's always good to know who's in the room, who's in chat. Feel free to say hello if this is your first time. Welcome. This is our weekly get together where we just make some music, I guess, or in this case we're mocking up some already made music. The last few weeks have been focusing a little bit more on just mocking up some well-known themes and some really great themes. We did do an original piece last week, or we did a deep dive on an original piece that was made using our starter collection. We have a sale on at the moment, and we have these incredible bundles, huge discounts, and we made a piece of music using just, or rather I wrote a demo for the bundle and then we broke the demo down, which is good fun. This week we're going to be doing something slightly different, but we are going to be using another of our bundles. As I said, we got the sale on for the next few weeks and we're going to be using our flagship collection. Hello, Harrison. Me too. I always look forward to them as well. I really enjoy these and it's great to hang out with you guys. So yeah, this is always a good fun experience. So yeah, we're going to be using the flagship collection. So this week we're going to be focusing, last week was full on hybrid. It's all synths and choir and percussion, and we just threw everything at it. This week we're going to be mocking up a piece from a very well-known film franchise. Maybe not the piece you're expecting. I don't know if you would be expecting a certain piece. We're going to be looking at one that's maybe flown a little bit under the radar, but we're going to be using the flagship collection, which is Nucleus, Jaeger, Solo, Areia, Dolce, and I'm sure I'm forgetting something in there as well. But if I am, I'm sure someone's going to correct me in the chat, but we're going to use those. Hey, Adrian, good to see you. And we're going to recreate a piece of music, or a short section of a piece of music from Avatar, The Way of Water. So Avatar, obviously very well loved film franchise, probably one of the biggest in the world. The first score was done by the now sadly late great James Horner, who was really, really good composer and worked a lot with James Cameron over the years. Way of Water was carried on by the composer Simon Franglen, who's been a steadfast fixture around Hollywood for years, working with a ton of great composers, obviously James Horner being one, Alan Silvestri, I think Hans Zimmer. He's really, really sort of been around and worked on some of the biggest franchises with some of the biggest composers, and was probably a very, very logical choice to step up to the Avatar films when James Horner sadly passed away, because he'd already been involved in them, knew James Horner very well, knows James Horner's style very well, but can also bring his own great style too. So yes, we're looking at the flagship collection. That's right. I'm not sure we're going to use every library in there, but we're going to try at least use a bit from every library. So yeah, we're going to mock up a piece, but not one of the big James Horner themes. There's a great cue in Way of Water called Leaving Home. And we're not going to do the whole thing, but we're going to do the last sort of minute and a half of that theme. It's a beautiful theme. I think it's a really good opportunity to show off the flagship collection, the different libraries, what they can do, and how we can create kind of epic, but in a more organic and understated way. Last week was that kind of trailerified epic when it's all about, the synths and the huge, larger than life orchestration. This week is more subtle and kind of refined and cinematic rather than maybe trailer-like, but, kind of big and huge and lush in its own way. I'm confused on which bundles to buy. Any unbiased recommendations? I can't really give an unbiased recommendation, only to say that genuinely all the bundles are great. They're all really, really useful. Yeah, I mean, I don't think you could go wrong with any of them. As I said, we wrote the piece last week with the starter collection. So if you want to check out last week's stream, that'll give you an idea of kind of, what can be done with that collection. This will give you an idea of what can be done with this collection. There's some overlaps in the different libraries as well. So it's not a case of each collection is 100% completely different. And there are some overlaps, and what you can do with one collection, you could probably do with another. But yes, they're all great collections. I think it's been really fun to hear what you guys have been doing, because, we've been sent some stuff with the different collections. Has been great. I agree, Harrison. Yeah, if you're a beginner, starter collection is great. I mean, I think you can do tons with the starter collection. You can do a load. The flagship collection has a few of the bigger and more sort of niche libraries in there. But yeah, the starter collection is a great place to start, hence the starter collection. And if you're looking for something that maybe has a little bit more, of a well, the flagship nature, I guess, and the flagship collection may be worth looking at. In my experience, I've often purchased more than I actually need. Yes, that's a common problem, isn't it, Adrian? I have way more than I use. But, you know, at the same time, it's always nice when you're looking for a specific sound and, you know, sometimes you have a library that can produce that sound. But yeah, as I say, all three of the collections I think are well worth checking out, and they're all going to offer a huge amount. And I think it's, you know, just sort of crazy prices for what you get for any of them. So you're not going to be hopefully too unhappy whichever one you end up picking up. Okay, we shall move over to the door in a second, and we shall get going. Harrison says, sometimes too many options can slow you down. That's true. That is true. Sometimes when I'm working, I work with a small number of libraries, or I work in a way where I hide a lot of what I have, and then I force myself to think about what's the particular library or sound that I'm looking for, and only load up the articulations that I think I'm going to use. Because yeah, if you're staring at 500, 800, 2000 tracks or something, sometimes that can be overwhelming. I definitely agree. Let me just finish setting this up. Okay, here we go. We are going to move over to the door. Here it is. Our door view now, as usual, or as we've been doing the last few weeks, we're starting with kind of piano sketch, and we're then going to sort of bring this to life with the different libraries we have available to us. So we've got Areia, we've got Dolce. We may end up using both. We've been seeing the last few weeks how they blend really well together. They both offer something slightly different. So we may end up taking that route and using both. We'll see. We've also got Jaeger, and we'll probably almost certainly use some of the brass from Jaeger. We're going to use probably woodwinds from Nucleus. That's going to be the most likely place. Maybe a few from Solo as well. We may also end up using a little bit of Solo brass. We'll see how that goes. We've got Chorus in the bundle. I'm not sure if I mentioned Chorus. Chorus is just incredible, absolutely beautiful. And we're definitely going to be using that today because it features quite a lot in the original piece, Choir. And indeed in Avatar in general, Choir is a pretty big feature, isn't it? We'll be using some percussion from Jaeger as well. Jaeger's got a lot of percussion. Some of it overlaps a little bit with Nucleus, but some of it's completely unique to Jaeger. In fact, quite a lot of it's unique to Jaeger. We don't have Cerberus, so we won't use any of that, but I don't think we'll need it. We won't be using any of these hits or anything. We may use a tiny bit of pitch percussion from Nucleus. We'll see. Since we're going to use hardly any, we may use a pad or two from Nucleus, although I don't think so. This is my trusty sub bass. We may use that. We'll see if we need it. I have a question regarding legatos in general. How do you deal with sounds sounding unreal on the first note of a legato? So do you mean the very first note is a little bit out of time or doesn't quite sound right? Sometimes it might be too soft or not have the attack you're looking for. Is that what you're getting at, Cosmodium? If it is, we'll take a little look today and see how you can mitigate against some of those things. Sometimes you can layer things together. Sometimes certain engines have certain ways of dealing with that. But yeah, legato can be one of those things. It's a bit tricky to sort of figure out. Okay, so shall we take a little look through? As I said, we could use Nucleus or Jaeger, but I think we'll use Jaeger. Yeah, it can be hard. Yeah, sometimes one of the best things to do, and we may end up doing this today, although it's quite a soft piece, so maybe not. But sometimes I will layer a short articulation over the beginning of a legato articulation, just to give it a bit more attack, you know, so you could layer something like a marcato or a staccato or staccatissimo, just to give it the attack that you want. That's one way of kind of quite commonly adding a bit more attack or a bit more kind of definition to the beginning of a legato phrase. Harrison said, depending on the library, you can combine modulation expression to soften it up. And yeah, if you want to go the other way and soften it up, then using expression curves or dynamic curves is a good way to do that. Yeah, there's no real 100% perfect way to sort of work with legato, but there's lots of options, and usually you can end up, you know, finding a system that works for you and gives you all the kind of sculpting that you need. Right. Shall we have a listen to what we have now? I did hear, well, I read a comment a few days ago that sometimes the music's a bit quiet, so I've boosted the volume of the music. Let me know if it's too loud or too quiet, or my voice is too quiet in relation to the music. Whatever, we'll just see how it goes. But hopefully this will all be a little bit louder for you guys now, but not too loud. Let me just start by turning these down a little bit just in case. Okay. So we're going to be starting sort of in the middle of this piece of music. It goes on for a while. It has this beautiful kind of quiet interlude, and then it builds up towards this kind of climactic section, which is this really beautiful theme. We're going to sort of start at the build up to that climactic section. This has not been transcribed. As far as I know, there's no sheet music available for this. So I've just listened and worked it out myself. It's probably not perfect, but hopefully it'll be good enough for kind of what we're doing today. Ben says, I own the Flagship. I'm so happy with it. Love the workflow and inspiration it provides. Thank you, Ben. It's good to hear that you like it. Yeah, I mean, I think the Flagship's a great collection of instruments. I think there's some incredible stuff in there. And it's good to hear that you're enjoying it. And maybe we'll take a look at the Flagship at some point. Although it's hard to imagine what piece we could mock up that would use every library. But yeah, the Flagship is full of great stuff. Okay, so let's have a listen to this. Cool, so that's the piece. You can see it sort of has this sort of rousing intro, then we have this big theme, really lovely theme, and then we sort of back down to this lovely outro. Sounds a bit weird and sparse at this point, but we are looking at, you know, just how to make that interesting at the end. Symphonic says, hello, why Avatar 2? First one was James Horner. It was, and it was great and beautiful. So many good themes. I'm sure we're going to get around to looking at plenty of Avatar over the next few days, weeks, months, years, decades, whatever, however long James Cameron decides to do it for. There's going to be plenty of opportunity to be looking at Avatar, and we definitely will. But we wanted to look at something that was a bit different and that was going to sort of work well with the Flagship stuff, I think, which is mostly orchestral based. So, you know, less of the kind of world instruments or percussion and things like that. So this theme, I think, is just a really lovely theme. It's one of my favorite themes from Avatar. James Horner and Simon Franglen. I think this is a really lovely understated theme. Lacks some of the ethereal stuff that certain other cues has, but I actually really like it for that. I think it's just a really nice, good orchestral theme. It's got some drums in there, and as I say, it kind of dives back into that ethereal stuff at the end, which we'll replicate. But yeah, we will definitely be looking at more Avatar and Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and goodness knows what over the, you know, streams in the future. And as always, if you guys have any suggestions, let us know. But this one, I think, as we mock it up and go through, it'll be a really interesting exercise in getting kind of quite a big sound out of quite a traditional orchestral palette. So where do we begin? We could either begin by mocking up a whole section, or we could just do maybe the intro and see where we start with. Okay, you've convinced me. I'm glad. Yes, and I promise, yeah, obviously, like I said, there's other incredible themes in Avatar. I'm sure at some point in the future we'll get around to doing some of them. And yeah, because Avatar 2 came in not too long ago, we have Avatar 3 on the way, of course, another Simon Franglen score. And I'm sure we'll look at that at some point in the future too, but we will get around. James Horner's music is incredible as well. And I'm sure at some point we'll have opportunities to look at that too. Okay, let's take a little look at this. Okay, let's maybe just start with these 2-3 bars that we have here. So we have the melody in these high strings, and then that breaks out into this little kind of arpeggiated section. So let's maybe just start by getting this in now. I'm not sure what to use today, either Areia or Dolce or both. I think maybe both, you know. That's what I'm thinking. So first thing we want to do is get this in, and then we'll just overlap everything. So we obviously have, I'm young too. I'm glad someone here is young. I'm certainly not young anymore, but never mind. Okay, so I think we're going to want to maybe start around here. It's not one of these like triple F pieces where everything's blaring full blast. I think maybe the brass and the strings get to maybe F, you know, forte, maybe double F at some points, but not very much. So I'm just going to draw in a curve that I think is going to work. Yeah, we can maybe even start a bit lower than that, I think. And we're sort of backing down quite a lot, and then we're surging up here, something like that. Nice. And I'm just going to instantly see if we can maybe double Dolce with this. We might not have to, might not work best, but I think for some sections of this, a combination of Areia and Dolce will work really nicely. We're just going to see right from the outset, is that something that sounds like it could work? So let's listen to Dolce on its own. Let's just blend these in together. I kind of really like that. Just make sure. Cool. Let's just leave them for now. We also have in the second violins the same thing going on. So we're going to use an octave lower for the second violins. Here we go. Just put them down an octave. No need to worry about that too much. I'm probably going to do the same thing in Dolce as well, just for this section here. Use the second violins as well. Wait for these to load up 1 second. Once we get going, we'll be moving faster and faster. Just sort of loading up some of the stuff for now. Okay, so and that's going to be an octave lower as well. So we have, let's just mute this stuff a second. Nice. Okay, that's a good start. Maybe now let's put in, what else have we got going on here? Yeah, so I can hear this kind of figure going on inside the cellos, I think it is. So this is what it sounds like. This is going to be one of those that for a while as we're building up, it's going to be like, and then as we get it all together, I think it'll sound pretty good. Same thing here, draw this curve in. So it's doing something like this. Something like that. And then I will get our bass in. And I'm pretty sure we're going to double our basses as well with Dolce. So sort of layer them together. Let's get that nice performance legato in the bass. Same thing here. Sort of build up to about here. Make some room, not quite as much, and then come up almost to sort of triple F here. Not triple F, sorry, forte, triple F. So. Yeah, really nice chords as well. This is basically F, B flat, and then C. So it's like a nice pop, almost like chord sequence. But the first chord, F, is inverted with the third in the bass, which enables us to step up. So the third is an A, so we get this instead. Really nice, just a much softer kind of approach. Better than same chords, but that inversion just gives it this kind of softer, slightly more epic sound. And because you're moving in step then, A, B flat, C, it gives it this much more kind of gradual approach to this sort of climactic section. It's a really nice little moment. Nice. And what we're going to do is just check. I got, yeah, group editing on for some reason. Okay. just see if this also works in Dolce. Let me just do a quick save. Dolce's got this beautiful bass sound. It's got this really great sound of the whole basses sound very thick and full. So I think a little of them along with the Areia basses, which are a little bit sort of tighter and less roomy sounding, I think it's going to work really nice together. And then we're going to probably put our brass in. So, wow, that's not what we wanted. There we go. Just make sure we've got all these. They need to be overlapped for the legato to trigger. So let's take that down a little bit in volume, and I'm going to do the same. Make sure these are overlapped as well, because this is legato for Areia too. There we go. So let's have a little listen to that. Oh, and it might help if I put things in the right place. That's bar 1. Okay. And then we move into our next section. Okay. Let's start putting our brass in. I think I'm going to use Jaeger. So here's our brass. Pretty simple stuff. It's going to be trombones and tubas. Don't think we're going to get any low brass in this. So probably all going to use the 6 horns here and the trombones too. Let's have a little listen to what we... Oof, that's a little bit loud for this. Probably not going to get much past the mezzo forte here. So something like that maybe. Even less than that, I think. Maybe something more like that. So we're going to want to sculpt the brass a bit more. So we're going to want these little kind of gaps between the breathing. Yeah, something like this. Move everything around a bit, make it a bit more human sounding. That sounds good. And then just a bit of a swell right at the end there. We're going to want to come a little bit more than that, I think. So maybe just about here. And the first thing I'm going to do right off the bat is I'm going to come here and I'm going to... let's lift this up so I can show you guys. I'm going to use some reverb. I've already got settings on here, so let's just see how they sound. Something like that maybe. Okay, that's nice. Starting to sound good. Let's move to Nucleus now. So we will use a bit of Nucleus brass because Nucleus has 2 tubas. This is a great sound. We're just going to use this for the bass notes. So reinforcing what's going on in the strings. Make sure we got a good volume on these. Yeah, something like that. Let's have a listen to that. Okay, that's starting to get somewhere. Now, we do have French horn in this as well. And the French horn is copying this little melody section here. But obviously an octave down again. So it's not going to be as high as those strings. It will never get that high. We'll use the 6 horns by Jaeger. They sound great. Obviously nothing's going to play up there. We're down here. Let's just make sure that is the right... Yep, so we're there. Okay, cool. So that's going to help really reinforce this melody. Nice, that's sounding pretty good. So we're probably going to start there and then rise. There we go. So that's a little bit too much for those horns. Okay, let's just take a little bit off there. Okay, that's starting to sound pretty good. Now what we'll do is the woodwinds in this piece, for this section at least, are really just doubling other instruments. There's no real unique woodwind parts here, but it's going to add a lot. Let me show you, and I'll maybe use a few things here. So that's going to be up here. And then let's make sure that we have some reverb on our woodwinds here as well. We're going to want this. This is quite a, I'm not sure this is recorded. It's probably Ayr or Abbey Road. I'm actually not sure where though, but wherever it is, it's going to be a big lush space. So we're going to want to kind of recreate that a little bit. That's nice. So we need to just mix that in. Nice, that's good. Let's maybe combine that with, do we use Nucleus or solo? Maybe we'll use solo instruments here because it's a bit more of a emotive section, and then we'll see where we're at. So we'll go down an octave for the oboe. Oboe really helps everything pierce through. It's got such a kind of piercing quality in that sort of 2 to 5K range. Flute's a little bit airier and more on top, but the oboe, if I take it in note, you'll really notice like a lot of the body goes. So that's going to really help this whole melody sing through. Lovely. And then we will do the clarinets as well, which, the solo, the flute, the oboe, and the clarinet just together are such a beautiful sounding combination. Nice. I think that's adding quite a lot of weight there. Cool. And then for the bass, the woodwinds, we're probably going to have the oboes, the bassoons. Not thinking straight today. The bassoons copying the bass part. So we won't use solo bassoon. We'll go to the Nucleus 2 bassoons. I think we want that to be a bit more of a simple sort of orchestral texture. And they're going to want... We'll delete those overlaps because these don't have... legatos, but that's fine. So we can delete overlaps. There we go. Got rid of them. And what we'll do is we'll just simulate a slightly lower range, almost like we have a contrabassoon or something. We'll take that down. And what this will allow us to do is take this, get it all the way down there, and then keep it up there as well. So we're going to get this really lush, thick woodwind sound. It's a really important sound in the kind of full orchestral ensemble sound. That kind of slightly woodier, reedier sort of sound is really important. Let's just blend that in with the rest of the woodwinds. What I might just do is, if we assume this is an orchestra with like 2 or 3 clarinets, which is very common, I'm going to say 3. I'm going to say we've got 1 clarinet on the melody, and we're going to have 2 clarinets kind of doubling these trombones, but not this part, obviously. It's the bass there. So that allows the woodwind to be a full section, so we're not missing big gaps in the middle. We're trying to keep the whole orchestra fairly kind of open here. So yeah. I'll show you in Cubase how to remove overlaps. So let's say we have these are overlapping here, make them big and overlapping. You can go to MIDI, functions, and then delete overlaps poly because there's multiple notes there. There we go. And same for this one too. Functions, delete overlaps poly. And then we should, oh, I don't know why that's not working. Maybe I've got the wrong. Usually this works fine. As soon as I'm trying to show somebody, it doesn't work. Classic. But this is how you do it. Basically, you go to functions, and then usually that works. I've got no idea why that isn't working. But it'll delete the overlaps of notes then between two notes. So if we try it with these two, it should work. We have some overlaps, MIDI, functions, delete overlaps. And yeah, for one it does, for the other it doesn't. I don't know why. But that's how you would do it. You can set that up to a key switch or, you know, key command if you want to do it that way. Okay, so this gives us... Let's listen to everything, see where we're at. Nice. And what we're going to do, I think, is just bring out that cello note. Where is our cello? It's up here somewhere. Oh, it's going to be in our Areia. So we've got this little cello line. I'm going to put that in the Dolce cello as well, just to really help it come out. The Dolce cello's got this beautiful kind of almost quite portamento sound. It's a bit slidey, maybe a bit too slidey for this, but combined with the Areia, I think it's going to work nicely and just help it sort of stick through. So I'm going to enable that. Wait a couple of seconds. We don't really have any shorts in this piece. It's all going to be longs or long-ish style sounds. There's, we may need to work on the kind of arpeggiator section, but so that sounds a bit weird on its own, right? Dolce's not really designed to do those kinds of big leaps, but gently in the background, I think it's going to add more realism to the cello. See if I take that out. Sounds a bit thin, but with it sort of adds some kind of emotion to it. It just helps it cut through a bit more. Yeah, it's a really cool function. I use it quite a lot, especially if like you're looking to ever clean this up for orchestration or something. If you do our course, the Crafting the Score, Tristan's course, it's a great course, but he goes into how he does all of that stuff. It's a real art form to get it ready to take into notation. And sometimes you've got to delete overlaps and quantize the ends and stuff like that. Now, what I'm going to do finally is sub bass this, right? But the sub bass is subtle in this. Last week, the sub bass is kind of front and center. This week, it's less so, but I still think we want it for that cinematic goodness. But quiet. It's just going to help give the low end the kind of consistency, because if you think about string instruments, even double basses and stuff like that, if you're using a bow, the string is vibrating, so nothing's ever solid. You know, the bass is always a little bit flubby, I suppose, to use a technical term, flubby. You know, but it's gonna make the bass sort of move a bit. If you looked at it in an EQ, you know, oscilloscope or something, you're going to see it moving like this. Whereas a sub bass is much more consistent. So what we do is we just add that in. It's going to just reinforce everything. This isn't included in the bundle, but this is literally the easiest thing in the world. If you have any bass or any synth on planet Earth, pretty much, you create a single oscillator with a sine wave, put a bit of filter on it to make sure you're only getting the bass parts, and you're done. It's literally that, you know. So it's not really, you could do it with any free synth, any stock synth, and it just helps to bring out the bass rather than overpower it, certainly in a piece like this. See without it? And you can almost hear the bass above is kind of flubbing. Now, I don't mean flubbing in a bad way. It's really good. It's got a life to it and an energy to it, because you can hear the strings sort of vibrating and moving under the bow. But in cinematic music, you kind of want that extra level of just consistency underneath. Without, it adds so much, and it's a very, very simple sound. Most cinematic stuff these days has it. So with now we get this. Nice. So we've sort of done this intro. Maybe let's get our Is there anything else that we need? We've got all our melody stuff in. I think we need a timpani for sure. That's going to be Nucleus. Here's our timpani. So I'm going to bring that in on the C, I think. So, and then it comes in there. So I'm just going to use a simple key switch here. I'm going to take it to the sustain roll, which is our C#1 here. You can see I can just move that up and down to move. I'm going to put it on the C#1 and I'm going to press. But it's obviously not going to be that loud and intense. So it's going to come in with a little bit of attack. In fact, I know what I'm going to do. To make this sound a little bit more, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put this over here instead. Start our roll there. And at the beginning, I'm going to use some hits, just some really gentle. And do a big, not a big hit, but a hit there. And then transition to our timpani roll. What that's going to do is just reinforce. I can't remember if this happens in the original piece, but I think for this, it's going to work. So. Yeah, we're really going to want that kind of roll to come out of nowhere. So. Nice. And we'll do a bit of probably sort of processing on that, but we'll worry about that when we get to it. Okay. The final thing to change here is this changes. And I think we're going to want to use something different here, probably like a staccato. We'll see. So I'll show you what I'm going to do here. Take this out. I'm going to use either I might use Mockup instead. Staccato is a bit too intense. It's not like that, and a spiccato's not the right thing. Is that me symphonic? I'm young too, or somebody else? I'm definitely not young. But I'll take it. I'll take what I can get in this world. Okay, so this is what we have. And we'll probably layer 2 articulations here to really get. So let's listen to all that together. Nice. And then in Dolce, maybe we'll use our second violins. What if we've got quite a lot of good stuff here, but maybe we'll try the Mockups in the second violins as well. Maybe we'll use something different. I don't think the energetic shorts would be right. I don't think spiccatos would be right. I think this is the one. This is going to sound really good on Dolce. In fact, we might even make Dolce more prominent. And what I'm going to want to do is take this out. Because we don't want that to go up to there. So. Just add some movement because we've got this long held chord. It's like we want some movement there. And you know what I might do? This is. So let's start doing that. Let's combine this, layer this with the legato. So here's where we begin to layer stuff up in a way to try and get the best of both worlds. So in the legato, it's going to sound like, let's make sure we've got everything. We're going to want to make those notes one. We're going to want to make sure everything overlaps a bit. And then blend to taste. So this is what it sounds like in the legato. Nice. We're not going to want it to come up that much, so probably only there. But this, I think, is just going to blend. Watch how if we just get the Mockups on their own. But if we add them with the legato, I think we'll get the best of both worlds. Yeah, I think that works, and we just want to back that off a bit. We don't want them to override the Mockups, I don't think so. Nice. Just Mockup sounds a bit too clipped to me. But just legato doesn't quite have the phrasing. doesn't quite work together. And with the Dolce, let's make sure that's sort of blended in where we want it. Yeah, I think that works nicely. So let's have a listen to that whole thing. Yeah, cool. And I think at this point, it makes sense to maybe have the clarinet do the same thing. That would be the most likely contender to kind of double what's going on in the second violins. So let's do that. Let's put that on our solo clarinet and see what we think. And again, we're looking more for texture than realism here because we're not hearing the clarinet sort of in its sort of pure form. I think that'll actually work really nice, yeah. So now we have this in the woodwinds. Cool, and I'm just going to do a few tiny little gaps between all these notes. You know, there's no way that the players would be holding sort of their breath constantly for this, so we want to simulate that and make it sound a bit more realistic. Okay, let's listen to everything together. Yeah, that's really nice. And then what we'll do here is we'll actually use a bit of expression. I don't use expression loads, but I want to back this down just a little bit here. It's dominating the texture a bit too much there. So just brings it back a bit. Yeah, I think that's working. I'm going to do a little bit of panning. I don't usually do too much panning. I'm going to do a bit for this because I want, let's do 40, and that's going to be 42. And then for these, we'll do maybe 30 for our core arts. Okay. Now, what we'll do finally is we won't leave the poor violas out. They always get a bad rap. They could either double our strings, which I think maybe we'll do double our cello. We'll see. And then maybe go. I will have a stream with James Horn's Casper music, premiering Poland. It'll be Casper's Lullaby. I want to use solo and Dolce for it. That's great. That would be cool. Let us know. Yeah, if you're in our Discord, let us know when that will be. That sounds very cool. There we go. We'll just have them split there. That's going to create a nice little moment and thicken up the texture of that harmony. And I'm going to bring those violas down a bit. And then finally, I'm going to add some more reverb to these strings. Everything can be a little bit more reverby because this is a much sparser arrangement in some ways than something like a big traditional, you know, epic music like with synths and choir and everything where you've got so much going on. The reverb would often just drain it out. This is a little bit more subdued, so we can get things bigger sounding in terms of the space they're in. So here is where we're at. Nice. Okay, let's move on and get our melody going because this is where things start to come to life. So this is what we have. It's a really interesting melody in the sense that it's on the horns and the trumpets in octaves. Not super uncommon, but maybe not the most common pairing either. So this is going to be sort of up here. We're going to get rid of all this because we don't need all of this. And I'm not going to double. I actually think it's played like that. So, and again, it's not super, super loud. It's not like a big blaring. And then just back off at the end there. Let's have a listen to that on its own. Yeah, nice. And then we'll just make sure we got all our legatos. Nice. And then what happens in the horns is they're just going to start that melody there along with the trumpets. So here we go. Just by here. We give them a little moment to breathe. And then I think they're down here, which is quite low for a melody, but in combination with the trumpet, it really works. So we'll just bring them a bit sooner. And then do something like that. Yeah, it's a really nice melody. We go to this minor, and with this one, I'm just going to put that back in. That's cool. And then our horns, probably the same thing. I actually think we do need that rearticulation. And then we just want to make all of that a bit more even. It's a bit, you know, those players are kind of coming in and out. We don't want that. Yep, all the brass is going to be from Jaeger, with the exception, I think, of our 2 tubas, which are in Nucleus. But yeah, this is all pretty much going to be Jaeger today. Okay, let's have a listen to that. Okay, we'll leave that for now. That's sounding pretty good. And we'll put our trombone chords in. So we've got chords doing this. Again, not too loud. You know, we're not going full blast with these chords by any means. We're just going to want to get them sort of commensurate to where the other instruments are, which is probably going to be right there. Actually, probably a little bit less than that. So something like that, maybe. And again, do tiny little breaks here. And we'll also just, because I didn't play this in, just going to add a tiny bit of randomness myself, because this is, everything's a little bit more exposed than it would be maybe an epic piece. So we're going to want to kind of get that in there. Yeah, that's nice. And I think they're going to back down actually here. Sort of coming down gently there. And even more back down there, really simulate the idea that there's sort of I think that will be enough for now, at least. Let's just save that. The choir really take over here, and they're providing the big sort of harmonic elements along with the moving strings. So we don't want these, you know, this is not a brass heavy piece. It's got a lot of brass melody, but, you know, not so much in the rest of it. So as you might guess, our tuba is just doing this. You know, it's a pretty simple piece when it comes to the, there we go. And we're going to want to sort of do that. So. Nice. That's starting to come together. Okay, so we have in our violins, so something like this. Now, I'm not sure if this is 100% right. Maybe we'll change it if we need to. But let's put them in our second violins first, where we've had everything going on. So we have that, and then we'll put that in our Marcato as well. And then we'll just sort of make sure that that's working together like this. And then, yeah, we're going to want everything to overlap a little bit here. Bring this out. And we don't want these repeated notes. And then overlap them as well. Make sure nothing's too loud, because again, I think that will sound good with the other bit. Which is there. So let's have a listen to them together. Let's listen to how that sounds in the arrangement. Yeah, that's good, because this also appears in the higher octaves as well. So we literally just copy Paste that up here. Press Y, make them an octave higher. Make sure we've got, and we're just going to change that to make sure it's also a Mercato short. So that should sound, and we're going to want to back that down a bit there. So we have that. Yeah, I think that will work. Make sure our Mercatos are not too loud here. And because we're using both of them, we'll blend them into taste. That should just fill out that upper octave. So. So you can see we move from the 1 octave there in the second violins to the 2 octaves, a nice big thick section. It just really adds a lot of kind of grandiosity to that figure. Yeah, that works. And I'm not sure if that's 100% the right line. We'll adjust it if we think it needs to be adjusted. I'm just going to put this on our Dolce as well. Keep it going on the Dolce stuff. Where is it? Oh, it hasn't come over. 1 second. I can fix that. Grab, copy everything over, and pop that in Dolce here. There we go. Okay. Bring that over. Bring that down as well, because we don't really want this featuring here. So let's just make sure that sounds good. Nice, and then we'll just add in the bass and cello, which I think are just playing root notes. Probably just that, I think. Again, not too loud, sort of more like here. They may be too high. Let's take a look. We got them on the C1. Let's see if they're on the C1 in our basses here as well. Maybe more like here. That would make sense, I think, leading up to here. We don't want to go too sort of down with those basses. So, okay, and we can just copy and paste what we have here on our cello, which are going to be here. They're going to move to quite a different, they'll be up an octave. That leap is fine. I mean, cello can easily do something like that. So, and we'll just sort of really back them down. Maybe there. Let's have a listen to that. Yeah, really simple orchestration, but it works. Just a little bit of movement in those strings, keeps everything moving along nicely. And then when we put the choir in, that's where the kind of secret sauce is. Okay, what was I thinking in terms of what we need to do? That's pretty much everything major for now. We'll worry about percussion and sub bass and things like that. Let's get the choir in. I think the choir is really important here. So we've got our little vocal stems here. And we'll split this out into male and female. And this is a great chance to sort of show Jaeger chorus. Jaeger doesn't have a choir, but if you get the flagship bundle, that's no worry because you'll have a choir and chorus, which is a very, very good choir. I think everything's going to be R's here, sustained R's. So, and we would just be taking probably the top 3 there. That one, yes, but none of these. Let's have a little listen to that. We just hold that note at the top. Creates a nice bit of dissonance and just sounds really nice. Okay, the choir's not too airy in this. You know, sometimes choir sounds like it's all the way at the back of the room and it's like in a big cathedral. In the Avatar stuff, it's a little bit more intimate, but not too intimate, of course. Let's just have a look and see where we're at with... Actually, before we do that, let's maybe get our men singing as well. So same thing here. We want R's. I think that's all we're going to use for this. But obviously, we'll take off the top and put in the bottom 3, and they should sound nice. And then it's just a case of blending them in, and we may need to do a bit of EQ with that. I do think we want a little bit of reverb, but maybe just the whole stuff. Give it some of the sort of nice juicy stuff. Yeah, let's just get that in and do a rough volume thing here. Yeah, that sounds good to me. Those male voices actually dominate a bit in this, but I think that works nicely. And then we'll just EQ them a bit if we need to, because they may be a bit, you know, too much in the arrangement. But let's have a listen to where we're at. Yeah, nice. And I do think we need more reverb than you think for this choir. Even though I'm saying they're not reverby, I think they need more reverb to sort of cut through the way they need to. That sounds about right. Maybe a tiny bit more. Yeah, that'll do for now, I think. And then we'll mix everything we can. Yeah. Nice. I think just turn them down a tiny bit so they're not too sort of present. Yeah, that kind of works. We'll worry about the percussion later on. We'll probably approach that separately. It's pretty simple percussion, but we'll just get to that. We'll just add our sub bass things. It's really simple. I'll just keep everything going nice and, you know, sound nice and cinematic. Sweet. Okay, we need, I think, the melodies on the woodwinds as well. This is like one of those where the melodies is on quite a lot of instruments. Even if you don't initially sort of hear it or feel it, it's there quite present. So I think we're going to want them probably there like that. Okay, let's fix all that up. So I'm just going to copy these over. They don't have to be anything. It's obviously going to be a lot. That's too high. So everything kind of ends there. See how it's going to add a lot of beautiful kind of airy texture. I think we can get them higher. Just adds such a kind of beautiful, haunting, almost like a bit of a mournful quality. But I think you need that. This piece is called Leaving Home. That's the feels of this. Yeah, nice. And then what we'll do is our moving line, we will put on the clarinet. Maybe we'll even double it, but we'll do that if we sort of have to, so to speak. Yeah, it's going to be an octave down. So yeah, that'll just add a nice texture there. Sweet, that sounds pretty good to me. And then very simple in the bassoons, that'll just be copying what's going on. Tiny little gap, moment to breathe, and then we go into the... So you can see this is a really simple arrangement. Like there's not a lot going on here. So it's about making everything sort of count. And then we're going to be there. think that's all we'll need for the woodwinds because they're not really present in the mix. Hey, no problem. Thanks for joining us. Okay, let's have a listen to where we're at. Nice. So what we're going to do is just that melody, the last note needs to sort of come in just a tad later, I think. Sort of there, slightly. Yeah, it's just a nice delayed, you know, it's a bit more like it would be performed, you know, slightly more delay on that last note. And then we're just going to back off some of those. I think we really want to bring that legato right down. It's going to be really quiet. And there's a reason for that in particular that you'll see in a second. So that's better, I think. The reason for that is because the next part of this piece is taken over by the strings. This beautiful little phrase in the strings. We really want to sort of draw attention to that. So I'll show you what I mean. Here we go. Hey, Bannerman, you haven't missed too much. And I mean, you can definitely always catch up again on the stream later. We're sort of getting into it now, but you haven't missed a crazy amount. Okay, so that's going to get back up to here. Not quite that loud. It's a really pretty gentle section, this. But it's beautiful. We're definitely going to want Dolce here. The combination of Dolce and Jaeger, and Areia, I keep saying Jaeger, it's beautiful, but I think here is the most important part for Dolce. So I'll show you what I mean. Let's have a little listen to that. And I'm just going to use our sustain, because Dolce, if you haven't been with us before, Dolce's got this great sort of re-triggered legato, same note legato. So same notes like this using the sustain, they'll replay a different, it's almost like an up bow, down bow sort of feel. So it will really sound realistic. Nice. And then that would just fix all that up as we go. Okay, let's make sure that's cutting through with Areia. Yeah, that sounds nice and articulated there. And this is just across either 2 or 3 octaves, all on the strings and the woodwinds as well. But it's the strings you really hear. Just wait for this to save 1 second. And then it's got a beautiful sort of harmony in the choir. So take that down, an octave there. Are we in the, yep. Nice. Are we hearing any of that? Yeah, there we go. So really nice full melody in those 2 octaves. Sounds really nice. At this point, we're going to use the second violins in Dolce as well. I agree. Fire and Ash is going to be cool. Have you guys seen the trailer? Okay, so just make sure I can hear that. Same thing here, little moment where we can re-trigger. There it is. And let's just sort of round that off as we get to it. Okay, so let's have a little listen to what we have. Nice, and then we'll just fill in the rest of that stuff and it'll be good. Okay. Meredith in Jaeger is a goat. I agree. She's got a stunning voice and yeah, it's really nicely captured in Jaeger. Is Fire and Ash another Verdant trailer? I don't think it was. Don't quote me on that, but I don't think it was. It certainly wasn't mine. Woohoo! But never mind. Okay, and same thing here. An octave down on the oboe. You know, everything here is just simple lines. Probably down here. Might be cheating a little bit with this range from here all the way down to here, but you know what? I think it would be doable. And we could always, if there were two oboists in the orchestra, which usually is, one might take one might take the other. They're really just going to help those violins sing through. Again, you don't really hear the woodwinds super clearly, but without them, you'd miss a lot. See? It almost had a kind of vocal quality to it. So everything sort of backs down a bit here. Let's go back to our brass harmony and get that in. So lovely chords here, going from this sort of minor to major. There we go. So we go down, and then we just bring it back up for that little section there, but we'll fix that as we go. Okay. Can't actually remember what the root notes are here, so let's just take a quick look. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so root notes on the tuba, very simple stuff. Like this. Okay, that should sound pretty nice. But probably down here. Yeah. Really nice chords. That sort of seventh there is really nice, minor seventh. But too much. And really just coming right down here. Again, it's all pretty understated, you know. We actually go from a 3 to a 4 here. We won't do that. Technically, if we've... oh, that should be on the violin. The tubas anyway. So... nice. And again, might be a bit laid on those strings as well. Starting to back them down for that last part of the phrase. Everything is just really nice and understated with this. Okay. Hey Felix, thanks for joining us. And yeah, no worries, drop in whenever you like. There's no time to be here, just whenever you guys can turn up. Whenever you gotta leave is always good with us. Here we go. So this is sort of where we need something like that. Yeah, I'm really quiet with these trombones. They're down to pretty much nothing here. Just there. Yeah, that's better, because what happens here, the sort of star of the show at this point, harmony-wise, are these vocals. So here we go. Looking great today, by the way. You mean the door? The weather? Beautiful sort of chords. I think what we do here is we split these out. Something like that. Thank you, Bannerman. I didn't want to just jump in and presume it was me, because there's nothing worse, is there, than if I'd said, yes, it's all looking very nice, and then you said, oh, the weather. You have to be like, oh, you're talking about me. But thank you. I can't take much credit here. I mean, it's all Simon Franglen. I'm just copying, but it's sounding really nice on these libraries, I think. The men sort of slightly dominate this section here. So let's just have a listen to that. Nice. Yeah, the women really come down quite quiet here. So, and they just sort of come back in around there. Let's have a little listen to the men and women on their own. So I actually think the men take this as well. Yeah, nice. There we go. So. Okay, this is one of those areas where we don't want any real gaps. This would be a lot more legato. Sometimes you want to take breaths, but here is where you'd want everything to flow almost with a bit of overlap here and there, you know. So okay, and of course we're missing our basses here. Let me just go and show tracks with data. We'll get rid of a lot of this stuff. Clean this up a bit so we can see what we're doing. There we go. That's nicer, isn't it? Rather than floating around all the time. Okay. Of course, we just need to keep these strings going. Let's have a look. Yep, all really simple stuff here on the strings. We got the basses doing this. Something like that. Some things can't speak today. Same thing is going to happen on the cello. I think it's all pretty sort of homogeneous and homophonic here at this point. So that's going to come down a bit. Do you know what? No, actually, I think what happens here, I think we even get the melody on the cello here. And we really just leave the bass as the only instrument playing the bass, which is fine for a section like this. Because it's a much quieter section, you can sort of break it and do something different. I think it's like this. Yeah, nice. That sounds good. And then we do the same thing, definitely in Dolce here, because we really want that singing quality of the cello. And then we can clean stuff up. Okay. Go back to our Dolce legato here. Here we go. Nice moment to get our rebow in there. Yeah, nice. That's good. Let's make sure we're not too loud though. And check that with. Yeah, this is really kind of subtle here. So with everything else. And we would also have that probably in the same octaves for second violins on the violas here. That's very, very normal orchestration for these big sections. Have everything other than the bass playing the melody, and then the bass is usually just playing the root note. It's a very, very powerful sound. I'm not sure if that's how it's done in the final score, but that is a way of doing things that's very common. Let's have a little listen to all of that together. Just add that one note. Nice, needs a bit of programming cleanup, but that's all something we'll do towards the end. Okay. Yeah, coming together quite nicely. We keep this going. Our bass is never going to really stop. Just give everything solidity. Okay, that kind of works, I think. We'd actually just dip everything down, including even our sub bass there. This is a real, you know, kind of quiet section. Quiet's not really the right word, but you know, everything backs off. So we're really going to make sure each section is doing that. Okay. And same thing here. You're going to reinforce that with a little bit of volume automation here. It's just like a tiny bit of mixing, really. Okay. Yeah, that's nicer. Yeah, back our oboe down a tiny bit as well. Oboe can be quite piercing. In fact, you know what? No. Maybe we'll do this instead. Maybe we'll put this melody on the oboe, on the flute and clarinet. Might be a better use. Let's see. I think that's better. Just opens things up a bit. Oboe really pierces, so it makes sense in the bigger sections, but in the other sections, maybe not. Nice, and then just add a little bit more. We really want to kind of, more than perhaps any other stream that we've done, really want to add the emotion to this, because, you know, every sort of instrument counts here. We're going to back stuff down and rise stuff up. So almost to nothing. Yeah, nice. Just a little bit up there. Something like that, I think. And same with right the way down to pretty much nothing here. We're even going to, again, use a bit of automation there just to... You know what? I actually wonder if this is voiced like that. That's a little bit more... I think that's a little bit more kind of idiomatic for the trombones. Yeah, nice. Okay, so let's have a listen to where we're at so far, because the rest of it is sort of carrying on with this theme. Then we just had a bit more percussion and some other elements as well, which we should get round to today, I think. So let's just see where we think we're at. Okay, nice. We are just losing those vocals a tiny bit now. Don't think we want to lose them that much. This is where we're sort of finessing everything. Yeah, that's better, I think. I think that's better. Yeah, that's better, I think. Nice. And then we go to the next part again. And then we've got to fix up the transition there. So here, very quiet. This is just following the basses. Something like that. Okay. Nice. And we just want to be bringing that up there like that. No gap there. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Something like that. And then we actually don't have any bass here. Yeah, we definitely want some bass here. So where is our bass? We have them here, of course we do. My bad, crisis averted. But we'll put everything in Dolce as well. Forgot we're layering these basses. So, everything Dolce. Yep. Back up here. Now what we can do is be lazy here, why not, and just copy this over, because it's the exact same thing all over again. Nothing changes, so we might as well just copy it over. Just these two bars here. Got to do some fixing up, but that's all good. Nice easy way of just copying stuff over. To grab everything, drag, and then we'll sort of fix everything up as we need to then. I won't glue everything together just yet. Let's have a little listen to that. Okay, coming together. So listen to that brass in isolation. Nice, okay. Just glue all this together so it's all back in one piece. Then carry it on. Okay. We carry on this melody, which changes slightly here. So it does this. Okay. Yep, we're just going to want a little overlap there. That's all cool. We'll fix all that as we go. All of these will be overlapped. Cool. Just bought this bundle download and now have wanted chorus for ages and now get a whole bunch of other libraries for free. Might be scoring a horror film next year, so Constrictor should be useful. That's awesome news, Gareth. Yeah, let us know how you get on with it, and excited to hear what you do with it. Yeah, Constrictor's really cool. I'm not sure we're going to get it in Avatar. We'll try though. Got an idea maybe it could work, but yeah, I like Constrictor a lot. It's a real little kind of treasure chest of stuff. Okay, nice. We're just going to copy this to everywhere we need it. That will also go in there. Then we're going to want those violins there and those violins there. Clear everything together again, and then we'll see where we're at. Hey, Attitudes, good to see you. Okay. Cool. Let's just get our bass in there because it's nice and simple. We're just copying and pasting at this point, so we're using it in Dolce and Areia. Okay, we're mixing those together. And it's also going to be in Areia as well. Again, the cello are taking the melody at this point, so there we go. It's great that so many of you are picking up these bundles. I've heard a lot of people picking them up, which is very cool. And I've heard some great stuff that you guys have written with them as well, which is very cool too. Okay. Okay, let's go to our vocals. Let's pop them in. So, where are we? Here? Yeah. Let's go here. Same thing as we've been doing. It's going to be sort of women in this top half, I think. So, this stuff is going to be men. Yeah, I think something like that. Keep that around there, and then we'll put the same thing in here. Just use the bottom half for the men here. I think as we go through, we'll figure out whether that's sounding right or not, but that's a good starting point, or we wouldn't want that either. That's in the women. Okay, keep them up there. Nice. So we're going to want a little bit of sort of movement in these. Something like that, I think. And maybe we're going to layer. I want to think how much it'll take to download the entire bundle. Yeah, I don't actually know. I don't know if we ever worked out how many gigabytes it would be, but it's quite a few gigabytes. But, you know, you can download however you need them. You don't have to download them all in one go. You know what? This might be a point to use chorus. This is using chorus. God, we're not with it today. This might be a point to use solo. Let's find, do we have our solo angelic? We do. Load this up. This might just be a good point to sort of push the melody slightly with solo angelic, because we haven't used solo yet. So this is our point to use it, I think. But it's going to be quiet. It's going to be like not just in the background, but watch what I think this is going to do. Let's turn that down. Let's also make sure, let's put that through chorus as well, just so we get the same reverb. Except That's where it should be. Sounds a bit weird to me, and that's why. It's just adding a little bit of legato phrasing to that section. Okay, I got a feeling. I don't know why this is. It's all up here. Don't know why I put it all down there. Everything sort of leaps up to that big. Nice. That's a very Avatar sound there, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Let's carry on. What have we got in our melody? So I've written horn harmony here because I remember at this point the horns and the trombones both take the harmony. So let me show you what I mean. First time around we just have the trombones. Second time around I believe the horns are taking the harmony here. So if I paste them in very quickly, we come up here. I realize we got to do a little bit of key switching. That's no problem at all. Everything up to this point has been legato. Here we're going to want to split to sustain. That's easy enough done. There we go. Just make sure that's in the right place so it'll trigger. Yep, nice. And then here we'll get the harmony in the horns. But it's going to have to be down here. It's just not going to work too high. Nice, yeah. And that's going to be stuff for the trombones that come back in on that chord there, I believe. I don't know if this is actually how it's done, but I think it's going to sound nice all the same. Okay, so let's have a listen to that. What I'm going to do is use a tiny bit of automation because we're going essentially from 6 horns playing one note here, or one line, to a split, you know, where you maybe have 2 horns on each note, or maybe even just 1 horn on each note. To simulate that a little bit better, just going to take that down a tiny bit to give the idea that these horns have split now. They're not taking the melody line. Nice. So I think we're going to want something like that. Well, it already has Nucleus and Jaeger, so the download isn't as terrible as it could be. That's good. Yeah, chorus. I mean, I think chorus is a must-have. I know I'm biased when I say that, but I genuinely think, yeah, if you want to do any kind of choral music, you can't go wrong with chorus. And then Constrictor, yeah, if you're doing a horror movie, or you just want a bunch of really interesting things that you can layer in or try different, you know, uses for, Constrictor's a lot of fun. So, but yeah, it definitely helps that you don't have to download everything from scratch. But I mean, at the same time, Nucleus is relatively small. I think it's only sort of 30 odd, if I remember, maybe even 20 odd. Some of the other ones are definitely a bit bigger. That's the way libraries have gone now, I suppose, isn't it? But Nucleus is pretty small and perfectly formed. So you can, you know, that doesn't take too long to download in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, just a little bit more movement. Can't really want to shape those. Something like that, I think. Yeah, something like that, I think. And same thing here, more movement. We want each chord to almost have these little like... Yeah, just let each chord breathe a bit more. Nice, and then same thing here. We want these... We need to sort of really make that stand out more. Overlap these slightly, I think. Maybe make these held. And then also bring up soprano angelic a bit more. Yeah, that just really makes that little section sound a little bit more realistic. Fade her in. Okay, we're coming towards the end of this. And then here we have this little phrase on the trumpets. Now what I'm going to do is split the trumpets out at this point. Keep these trumpets in legato and really make that legato here sing out. So just the one line. So sort of like this. Let's listen to that in context. Nice. So we'll even get a lead-in note there. I think maybe the C, we'll see how it goes. I think just to bring that trumpet in a bit more smoothly. Yeah, maybe just here. Maybe the same notes as the melody. Something like that. And then we're going to double or just duplicate the track here, and then we'll get the sustain elements on a different track. So we don't need any of this stuff. We're literally just going to make this sustain key switch. That's all we need it for. I'm going to come back up here, copy these two parts here. Yeah, and then that one there, I think. There it is. And then here, I think. So something like that. Let's listen in context with the other trumpet. Yeah, something like that, I think. Turn them down a tiny bit. Okay. Yep, nice, okay. Little swell there. And then same thing, but this time, second time, we only have one note. It's like we're breaking down. As the thing gets quieter, you get basically less notes. You know, you get less harmony and less orchestration to kind of just reflect that. And then we just want to copy that again. That's in this top trumpet again. Number one trumpet. And same thing here, maybe not quite as late this time. Yeah, that kind of works. Maybe a little bit later, because I do want that trumpet to stick out a little bit. Okay, getting there. Yeah, she says, can you also do a mock-up on Batman vs Superman? That would be a cool one to do. Have to step out, run an errand. No problem, Harrison. Yeah, of course. Feel free to watch it when you're back, and have a great day. Okay. Just fix all that orchestration up as we go. But what we do need here are these big chords. They don't stop. In fact, they're going to get louder at this point. So. We actually have this really nice moment on the low strings and brass again, which I'll show you in a second. That's going to follow. There we go. And then all of this stuff we're not going to want on the trombones. Nice. Yeah, okay, cool. I'm just bringing that back up there. And little gaps here to just make each of these almost like a little marcato. So yeah, nice, but not that much. Never really gets to that level. But you'll see when I put this in the tuba and the low strings, it's a really nice little sort of counter line. Let's put that in our tubas here. So nice up to there. Really just nice little step up. Again, really simple writing, but as I always say, I don't mean that in a disparaging way, because simple very often is best, and this is just really nice, beautiful. You know what? For this section, let's take them out. Let's maybe use our Dolce Marcatos and our Areia Marcatos then. Just really nice, you know, simple, clear orchestration. I have a question. How do you automate instrument articulations, staccato, pizzicato? Jonas, do you mean how do you change between them? If you're using like one track, how you get from like pizzicato to staccato, for example? If you do mean that, I will show you in 1 second. So Dolce, let's just load up our Marcatos here. Occasionally get an error message come up. That's just because I haven't fully loaded these yet. Nice. I think that will work really nicely. Let's bring up our Areia core there. Pop that in there and then just change that to Marcato short. I think that will work as well. Let's have a quick listen to that. I think we really want that to be a more Marcato-like phrase. Sort of walk up to this next section. So let's have a listen to how they're sounding. Yeah, I think that works nice. Yeah, cool. That's sounding quite nice. Want a little gap there and bring that bass off. We probably won't fully program this today in terms of this needs probably more careful programming than a lot of other mockups do. We won't get around to all the details, but that's fine. We'll get it sounding okay, I think. Yeah, we're going to want to sort of plot up to that. So something like that. Yeah, that's nice, but not that intense, obviously. I think that's just too loud. Yeah, we need it more sort of where the legato is. So yeah, I think that works. Do you know what? I've got a feeling they might be down there. That's a much better place range-wise for them to do that. It just makes a lot more sense. It was the best choice to hire Simon Franglen to take on the mantle that James Horner set up an Avatar, considering they worked together. They certainly did, yes. I think you're right. I think that this was very much like a continuity score, right? You didn't want someone to come in and do something wildly different because James Horner's score is so beautiful and so iconic, you know, for the franchise. And James Franglen had been involved with that score, and I think a lot of other James Horner scores in the past too. So he was coming in and really just sort of carrying on things. But, you know, there's some of his unique touches in there. It's inevitable, right? I mean, as a composer, there's no way you can truly be completely, you know, faithful to someone else's work. But he certainly kept that kind of continuity going. And I think, yeah, it happens sometimes. I know John Williams occasionally has used another great composer and orchestrator called William Ross, who has worked and sort of, not necessarily co-written, but sort of finished off certain cues and occasionally come in. He stepped in certainly with Chamber of Secrets. I can't remember why, but John Williams couldn't finish that score, so he wrote several of the themes, and William Ross basically took them and orchestrated them. It does happen from time to time, especially with these really iconic composers like John Williams and James Horner, where you almost want someone to come in and be so intimate with what they do that they can just carry on almost without skipping a beat, as opposed to bringing in a completely new composer with their own take on things, who's going to try and do things completely different and not give you the results you want. Nice. And then we've just got this. That's all too high. There we go. This one. Okay, we're almost there. And we have this final sort of little refrain that leads us on into there we go. We'll just make that held. It's going to sound better, I think. Join all those together. Going to want a little bit of dip here up to this final section. So something like that. Yep, nice. Maybe not quite that loud. Maybe more like sort of, I can't draw today. There kind of thing. Yeah, I think that's cool. And then we can just copy this stuff over. Might as well just do it this way, I think. There. Glue all that together. That's going to be an octave lower because it's our second violin. Just a nice little thing at the end there. Let's make sure that's also in our Dolce. Again, glue that up together. That should be up there. Cool. Same thing here. Make sure that's in the right spot. No, we'll have that go up. Adam, is Dolce your favorite string library? It's right up there, definitely. I use it an awful lot, Dolce. Certainly as a layer, sometimes not always the main library, but as a layer, it kind of really sings through. I like Areia a lot as well. I think it's a cleaner sounding library in some ways. Doesn't have quite as much character, but sometimes in a busy mix, you kind of want something a little bit more neutral. So, okay, we are getting there. We're not too far away from being done. That was probably the wrong one, but I might copy that over. Here's a good example of where we can layer. So we were talking at Cosmodium, mentioned this at the beginning about how he gets certain attacks on things. So let's have a listen and show you what I mean. So here's an example of if we take out that note there and we transition from the marcato back to the legato, listen to this. It doesn't quite have, we have this, it sort of goes somewhere, right? It's like it doesn't have the attack. Doesn't quite work. But if we do this and just use the marcato, it'll just flub out quickly. It's gone. But combining these two will really work in this instance, I think. Listen to how you get the attack of the marcato, and that just bleeds into the legato then. And then I just basically match them up in terms of energy. So that's a little bit too intense there, but that's fine. Just back that back down there. There we go. In the mix, that will sound fine, but it gives it a little bit more attack. So without the marcato, it's okay, but with the marcato, get a little bit more of a hit there. Cool. Don't you think adding a track to each articulation has a greater impact on processing usage than opening unified articulations within Kontakt? I'm actually not 100% sure. I've never tried it before to see which one adds more than the other. I use an articulation per track. I've used key switching in the past as well, but I use articulation per track just because for some of the trailer stuff that I do, it's a much quicker way to work than trying to key switch all the time. I actually don't know whether it does use that much more processing. Somebody that knows more about programming and that kind of stuff will be able to tell me. As far as I know, it doesn't use sort of what I suppose what you'd imagine is like the same ratio of processing power. In other words, it's not like stacking 500 individual contacts is 500 times the processing power. My understanding is it doesn't quite work that way. But I've never actually done a one-for-one to see whether a key switch template takes up less processing power than individual articulations. Maybe we'll try it one day and see. Did I move that track up there? I think I did. Yeah, I wish I kind of knew, but I'm not 100% sure what does. I'm sure it does use a little bit more CPU, but I'm not sure it uses as much more as you'd think it would. I think people just assume 10 tracks would be 10 times as much. That's not how I think it works, but I'm not a Kontakt programmer or a programmer full stop, so. Okay, nice. And the percussion is really going to add a lot to this piece as well. We're going to go on for another half hour today, I think. A bit longer than usual, but we're going to finish this off and get that in. Do you always use AI libraries to explore other companies' libraries in a day for a different palette? Say CSS. When I'm using for personal use, I have a whole bunch of different libraries. Audio Imperia definitely makes up a big part of that because I think there's some incredible libraries in there. Pretty much everything I do has some Audio Imperia, but no, for certain things I would use other libraries. Of course, we're all composers. We're not bound to any one developer as much as I love Audio Imperia. So no, I use different things, but I do nearly always end up using a lot of Chorus, a lot of Dolce, a lot of Areia these days, a lot of Jaeger brass and Talos brass. A lot of Cerberus. Cerberus is great. A lot of Artifact Reanimate for some of the trailer stuff. So it makes its way into pretty much everything I do. But I use other libraries as well, of course. Yeah, it's one of those. It's just the best tools for the job. But I think that Audio Imperia has developed a really great catalog, over the last few years. And with Poseidon and Dolce and the other stuff that we've added, I think it's quite broad now. And yes, Pyramid's a really great engine as well. It's really fast and simple to use. And sometimes I like to work in just Nucleus or just Jaeger because I just really want to get directly to writing. Okay. So I think these remain on the horns again. An octave lower than that though. So right there. think that would all just carry on there. You wouldn't just suddenly change. This is a nice moment for the horn, just to lick up there. Over those 2 bars, gradually comes down. We'll obviously fix all that. This is a quick save there. Yeah, great. You have complete control of negative delay. Yeah, that's another really, really cool thing about Audio Imperia as well. It's that sample start time and the kind of control you have over that. But yeah, of course, I mean, there's lots of different developers out there, all with their own characters. But yeah, Audio Imperia does make its way into my professional stuff as well. Even when I'm not working for Audio Imperia, it's still one of the most important elements of my template for sure. Something like that. Okay, let's start backing all this down, because this sort of does, this is the breakdown, if you like. So we just go through, sort of make sure we got a nice natural decrescendo and all that stuff. Cool. And same thing here. Have you used a non-sample based but program like Solista or another physical modeling based VST? I haven't really, to be honest. No, I haven't explored those things too much. I still use mostly samples. I know there is some interesting stuff out there these days. Okay. And they're just going to come down quite quickly. Everything's going to sort of fade out. Just so we don't have anything just drop out. Same thing here. And then we'll add some percussion. That's going to add a lot here. And if we got time, we'll finish the piece. Okay, so let's finish up our timpani. This doesn't happen in too many places, timpani, but it does happen here. Get that in quickly. Just nice, simple. How the timpani is traditionally used, just to mark out these sort of keynotes. Okay, we don't want that. But you're going to do a little flam, simulate a little flam on this. Something like that. We want that to be... oh, getting this all wrong now. There we go. Move that back to hits. Just drag them back a tiny bit. That's a kind of a flam. Yeah, maybe more like that. Nice. Let's now go about adding main percussion in. Kaya says, how often do you write your own original music and what inspires you? Where'd you get inspiration from? Sometimes it comes easy. Most of my original music is usually for either maybe trailer pitches or sometimes do a bit of film and TV stuff. So actually most of it's not really my music, if you like, purely for me. In terms of absolute original music for me, I plan to sit down and write. I really want to do that more this year and next year now, particularly next year. Spend a bit more time writing my own music and less, you know, writing for media stuff. Not that I love writing for media stuff, but to kind of explore my own musical tastes a bit, I guess. Okay, we are getting there. Oh. Okay, we want that nice big. That will do us there for now. Okay, let's get in these drums. So there's some quite big drums in this. Let me grab all the drums that I know are going to be sort of big hit drums. I think we can use Jaeger now. Hans Zimmer is always going on about this technique. Sometimes the biggest drums are not played at full velocity. Sometimes playing drums more quietly but bringing them up in the mix sounds a lot more epic than if you just smash the drums as hard as you can, which is kind of counterintuitive, but it really does work very often. So yeah, we're going to try and explore some of that today and show you what I mean. Let's make sure we're in the right place. I think we are. Okay, so oof. Sorry guys, didn't mean to scare you then. Let's find where they were. So there. It's not quite that quiet, but maybe. Did you ever sit and write on pen and paper? I actually did. When I started out, I was more of a pen and paper writer. But then, yeah, obviously the industry has changed a lot and you need to work with computers. I was always a computer writer as well, but I used to write with notation inside of computers first off. And then I transitioned to doing more DAW-based stuff. So we want our Jaeger toms here. How about you guys? Have you always been pen and paper writers or DAW writers? Or... Okay, nice. Here we go. I think we'll also use taikos as well. Jaeger taikos, nice. Let's get them down. Let's find where they are. So our taikos are there. Hit that one all the way up there as well. And then we've got these ones. There we go. Okay, let's have a listen to those. Oh, might help if I got my track delay in the right places. Which one's out? Yeah, it's that. It's going to be possibly there. Just make sure that's right. Yeah, cool. Okay. That's better. Okay, let's mix these to taste. Let's see how they're sort of sounding in the mix. So you can see we're not using smashing full hits, we're just using kind of a combination of some gentle hits but layered up. And actually let's get the taiko rims in there as well, because I actually think they're going to be cool. So just quiet. And the other thing we're going to want to do, let me just close that down, is come to our, let me just do it over here in my other mixer. Where is my groups? There we go. And with this percussion, I think we're definitely going to want some kind, maybe like a chamber reverb. Something like that, possibly. So let's try the large wooden, but I think we're going to want... Yeah, that sounds a bit better. I think we'll also send a little bit to the hall as well. Get some of the wider sound, but not quite as much. So maybe something like that. Yeah, I think that will help. Nice. So they're quieter. That's going to sound a bit better, I think. Okay. So let's play around with the dynamics of these a little bit. Something like that. And then with these taikos, what I'm going to do is add some random quantize here. Not make them sound so rigid, you know. Oh, let's just grab all of those and all of those. Something like that, I think. Probably won't have time to program these super well, but we'll get them in a kind of decent shape. Yeah, nice. So they're going to be a bit quieter, aren't they? And same, particularly in these grand casas. That's coming together, I think. Yeah, what we'll do now is just very quickly duplicate these and make these rolls. So get rid of that. If I do this, go to Jaeger, we can go to our percussion rolls. These are going to be here. Yes, replace them and then just do the rolls on here. I think that's going to be easier. So we've got our rolls good to go here. So, yeah. So I think they're going to be all there. On that bar there. Okay, let's just get these rolls in quickly. So we're going to want, where are our Grand Casa rolls? C-1 here. Sorry, everyone. Got to remember that these are very loud. And then we should have our tom rolls as well. They're going to be in that. And then, nice. Okay. Now we can just start sort of mixing these in where we need them. Okay. Let's just see. Might help we get them timed right. Yep, so we're going to want them to be should they be lined up? get them. There we go. Make sure they don't come in too heavy. That should be them about right. Nice, we just don't want quite as much swell on those finals there. Yeah, nice, okay. Okay, cool. And we just add some metals in and we'll be almost done. Okay. Okay, so we want Piatti. We use our Jaeger Piattis. So it's just going to be the big crashes. C5. Let's just get them in. There we go. It's actually going to be... Oh, let me turn them down. Just very loud, obnoxious Piattis every 2 seconds. Where are they? Where are they? Where are they? There we go. Okay. And they are not there either. Okay. Much quieter. Don't want them the second time. Okay, let's get our Jaeger, sorry, Nucleus, sorry, symbol. There is one here. Let's find it. Let's, where would it be? Where would it be? Where would it be? The atonal percussion. That's what it's under. Okay, so we're going to want the sustain roll on that symbol. There it is. Same thing here, turn that down. Okay, I made sure to try and play this in live. Okay, not sounding too bad. Just gonna want a big hit there. All the way up there. Just put in these final rolls. And that's our C sharp. So, yeah, there we go. Just turn that down a tiny bit in our toms, I think. We'd ideally want more time to mix these toms, but we're not going to get it today, but that's fine. Okay, let's do a super quick, not even really a mix. I'm just going to put a really quick multi-band compressor on this just to clean it up a little bit. One of my favorites here. We use this one. That should do us nicely. And then we'll do our final part when we're done. Just going to want a couple of hits on those downbeats there. Nice, but that's too loud. We're going to do a super quick end to this now. It's not going to be the best in the world, but I think we can get this sounding quite nice. We're going to put this on, let's put it on Nucleus's solo French horn. We could use solo. We've already used a bit of solo today. Let's use Nucleus's French horn. And then we're going to do a little bit of jiggery pokery for the ending, which I think will be fun. And then we're kind of there because the ending's a very kind of soft avatar-y like ending. So first thing we're going to do is find our solo French horn, Nucleus solo French horn. We're going to pop that there. Something like that. Nice. We're going to make sure that's quiet. It's a very quiet piece at the end. We want, let's just continue Dolce on that high F. Beautiful way just to end on some drama. Bring that down a bit. Nice. Let's just make sure we're really fading all of this out. So we're getting a bit more of a sort of realistic end to things. It's really interesting how a composition is constructed, decision delays, the intentions. I agree. Yeah. I mean, it's just whenever I'm doing these deconstructions, you know, for the streams, I'm always amazed at how people make these really simple decisions, but they just work so well. And we just want that big tuba there as well. Yeah, that's the magic of composition, right? Everyone just does something a little bit different, but seeing it all layer up, how someone does something. We haven't really finished the woodwinds here, but that's fine. I mean, we probably won't get round to that now. Okay. Nice. Very quick automation fade on some of these. Now I have an idea just to finish this off at the end, which I think will be fun. Let's get some Nucleus 2 flutes. We're ending on this ambiguous suspended fourth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a now stock Cubase plugin, Shimmer. This is the Cubase Shimmer. Listen to that. Beautiful. And we can just layer that in. So let's just do that. Nice. We'll just take that violin all the way to the end there. Like that. So. You know what? We're going to do my favorite thing. We were doing this last week. We've done this every week. It seems to be my staple now. We're going to take the mark tree. We're going to do Peter's technique last week of decapitating this, which seems a bit weird. Take it down super, super quiet. All the way down here, and then we're going to find it's these slow ripples, I think. It's maybe the sparse ripples, and then we'll do the same thing. We'll use, yeah, let's use Shimmer again. Let's see if that works. Yeah, listen to that. Just add that quietly. It's going to be really quiet though. Nice. I think that's quite a nice way to end it. Yeah, let's wrap it up. I think we'll pretty much finish there. Like I said, we could really just copy and paste some of this stuff over from here to the flutes. Let's just do that really quickly just to get some consistency with the flute there. Just to keep the flute going. Something like that. Yeah, and we'll copy what's in the basses to the bassoons as well. I mean, this is just speed writing now, but hey, it's going to work. There we go. And then double check, make sure we have something like that. Do our delete overlaps like we were doing at the beginning. Delete those overlaps. Oh, got rid of them pretty much. Okay, let's have a listen to the whole thing, shall we? We didn't quite finish it, but we sort of got most of the way there. Here we go. This is, let's just get a quick limiter on this and make sure we're sort of up where we want to be. Push out a little bit more. And have a listen to the final thing. Cool. Yeah, not bad for a couple of hours work. Yeah, this is a piece that's quite difficult because it needs a lot more massaging than some other pieces that maybe have more dense arrangements, but we didn't do too bad a job, I think. And we didn't touch the mixers. We didn't really do any EQ or compression or anything. Tiny little bit here and there, I think. But yeah, this is all just kind of straight out of the box, really, apart from that multiband compression and a bit of reverb. So hopefully it gives you a good idea of kind of what you can do with the flagship stuff. And as you can say, you get a really nice, bold, beautiful orchestral sound out of this with just a touch of hybrid stuff here and there. So we shall head back to just chatting and we shall wrap up and we shall say goodbye. Cool. That was really good fun. That's Simon Franglen's Avatar Way of the Water 2 score. A cue called Leaving Home, and it's the last section of that if you want to go check out the original and see kind of what job we made of it. I think in the end it came together okay. You know, it came together pretty well for a couple of hours work. It'd almost be good to spend another hour on this and finish it off. But hopefully it's a good indication of kind of what you can do with these flagship libraries, you know, Nucleus, Jaeger, Chorus, Areia, etc., Dolce. Particularly layering up Areia and Dolce. Obviously the wonderful sound of Chorus is always great as well. And then the Jaeger brass, I just love. It's the same with Nucleus brass. They just cut through. They sound so bold and cinematic. Bit of reverb just to push them back a bit and they sound incredible. So yeah, hopefully this was really useful for you guys. Next week we will be back. I'm not 100% sure what we're doing, but we will let you know as always. And as always, if you guys have any suggestions, do let us know in the comments or on our Discord. If you're not on our Discord, please do join. That's growing by the day now. We're getting new members every day. It's really turning into quite a good community. So yeah, please do come on and join us. And we talk all things music. And I will also put probably this MIDI file and other MIDI files on there as well. Most of the streams we do, I'll be able to upload the MIDI files. I'm in the process of doing the last couple. Tomorrow I'm going to do a couple more. And then I'll get this one up pretty soon as well. So if you guys do get the flagship collection and you just want to dig in and see what you can do with this MIDI, and I'm sure you could improve it and you know, mix it and get it all sounding really nice. It would be great to hear if you did that with the flagship collection. Thank you, Tees. Yeah, so yeah, a couple of hours. I think it's just, yeah, obviously Simon Franglen did the hard work for us by writing it. But yeah, and these instruments just sound great. So a couple of hours work and you can get really good results with them. Thank you all for joining me, guys. Like I said, if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do. We're growing every day. We're well on our way to 10,000 subscribers now. So maybe we'll do a little stream party or something when we get to 10K subscribers. And if you're not on the Discord, join that as well. It's going to be a really great place for, you know, feedback, self-promotion. If you want to ask questions, if you want to talk all things music, we do on there as well. Okay, we shall say goodbye for now. Thank you so much for joining me, everybody that did. It's a really, really, really cool couple of hours to spend with you guys. Thank you, Hito. Yes, happy anniversary. It's 10 years. And obviously we're celebrating with our sale. So do check out the description. The link is in the description below if you want to check out the sale. It's a pretty good one. And I used everything from our flagship collection here today. Thank you, guys. Whatever you're up to for the rest of the day, have a great day. And I shall be back next Tuesday. And I will hope that you will join me. In the meantime,